Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 10th annual Canada-Chicago Mentoring Program, 10 years. I'm Stephen Collins. I'm the CEO of Matter. Delighted to be part of this, to welcome you all here, to welcome you, those of you who are watching online. This is, I believe, our longest standing relationship is with the Canadian Consulate, since we've only been open technically for 9 years. So basically, this was like 5 seconds after we, or even 5 seconds before we opened, we did this event. So that's how we end up with 10 of them in 9 years for any of you who are counting or really care other than me. But for me, it's very exciting to have anything related to Matter that's 10 years old is very exciting. So welcome. For those of you who aren't familiar with Matter, we're a healthcare technology incubator and innovation hub that opened in 2015. We do a number of things. We run an incubator for healthcare startups. We've incubated 850 companies since we started. Collectively, they've raised about $5 billion. We run accelerators. We run, at this point, about 8 to 10 accelerators per year. We generally partner with health systems and life sciences companies and payers and others in the industry to run those programs. We just closed applications for one focused on maternal mortality. We're partnering with HCSC and Stryker and Organon and 3 different health systems and a venture firm. On that one, the program will kick off next month. We also have some insights capabilities. We have some training products. We work with the industry to help them innovate more effectively. This program is really about helping Canadian companies enter and grow in the U.S., basically harnessing our expertise to help these companies, these Canadian companies, accelerate their trajectory into the United States. So that could be regulatory issues, could be reimbursement issues, could be go-to-market strategies, it could be understanding the U.S. healthcare system, which is markedly different than the Canadian healthcare system. Could be any number of areas in which we help them with their U.S. strategies. And in a few minutes, you're going to hear from 4 terrific companies that have gone through, went through our most recent program. Thank you, a few thank yous. Thanks to all the mentors. Some of you have been with us for 10 years. This program would not exist without you. Thanks to all of you, whether it's been your first year or this will be your first year or this will be your 10th year. Thank you very much. Thanks to the team at the Consulate. Samir Ahmed, thank you very much, as well as Julien and Corey for your leadership and your partnership and support, in some cases for several years. I see Chantal in the back. Thanks for helping put this together when you were with the Consulate. Really appreciate that. The instigator of our relationship with Consulate is one of our board members, Steve Gould, who is an entrepreneur and an executive and a mentor. He has a role with the Polsky Center at the University of Chicago. He has had a number of roles. He was the chief of surgery at Michael Reese Hospital. He started an artificial blood company and took it public. Has been a mentor to countless startups. And has really been sort of one of the fixtures of the healthcare and life sciences communities for the last decade, if not longer. And again, he's on our board. He's going to be the MC for the evening, and it is my pleasure to hand things over to Dr. Steve Gould.
Thanks, Steve, and thanks to all of you for coming, and welcome. Again, I'm not going to repeat. Steve's given you the history. These years get mixed up. So Matter opened in February of 2015, and as he said, I think day 2, this was the initial program. So that's why Matter is sort of 9 years. This is the 10th program. We got to keep that straight every year. And it's nice. Many of you have been here from the start. I thank everybody that Steve mentioned. I'm not going to repeat all the names. I do want to acknowledge Chantal because, as he said, Chantal and I were there at the beginning. The story I will tell was in September of 2014. I was on a panel talking about a program at the time that was called Chicago Innovation Mentors, or CIM. And she came up to me afterwards. It was a mentoring program. The essence of what we do today is from that program. And she said, she introduced herself. I knew her name. I hadn't met her. I had not engaged with the consulate at that point. And she said, I'd like to talk about starting something. That's how it began. And we had a number of people that said it'll never happen. Well, it did happen, and here we are on the 10th. So thank you. So the format tonight, let me just go over the ground rules. We've got 4 companies that have worked hard. And for those that may be new, we follow a fairly rigid, I don't think I'm a rigid person, but we found a rigid format works. The presentations are 5 slides in 5 minutes, and there's a point to each slide. And each of these teams has worked hard. As most of you know, it's a lot harder to give a 5-minute talk than it is a 1-hour talk. And the companies all learned that, and they did a good job. And Sam and Julian did the bulk of the working with them. I had the privilege of joining some of those calls. And I have this unique skill of digging in and asking questions that they've never thought of. Telling them I'm not being mean, I'm trying to prep them for tonight, and they all take that in good spirit. So thanks for putting up with me, because I know you're all going to do a great job tonight. But the 5-minute format is to set up the 10-minute Q&A session, which to me is the most important part of this evening. So I tell all of you, when you go to ask a question, please stand up and give your name. And we're recording. Is this live or are we recording? It's a recording, yeah. I didn't think it was live. And I will repeat the question for the recording for those that may want to watch it later. So what I tell you, and I know you're all very accomplished and very distinguished, don't give a lecture to try and impress your peers here. Ask, you can make a comment, but ask a question. And I tell them, don't give a lecture or answer, give a short answer. And the reason is in 10 minutes, I hope that we can get 7, 8, or even more questions. The goal of that 15 minutes is to ask you at the end to volunteer for which of the teams you'd like to mentor. We'll only put you on one team. You can volunteer for all 4 if you want, and then rank them when you rank them. We'll get together the next few days, and we'll try and get them the 4 to 5 best mentors for each of their unique needs. So that's the basis of all of this. So I hope everybody will follow the rules. I do pay attention to the clock in fairness, so I've told them they can get 5 minutes and 5 seconds. They can't get 5 minutes and 30 seconds because it won't be fair to their peers. Anyway, with that in mind, we're going to kick off. The first presentation is Fern Therapeutics, and Alcon's going to do the presenter. I got a different presenter on the next one, but we'll get to that.
So good evening, everybody. Ali Khan Jamal, I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at FEM Therapeutics, where we are focused on personalizing therapeutics for women. The challenge that we're trying to solve is when you look across many therapeutic areas, you see the use of standard one-size-fits-all medical devices. And while these devices allow you to reach a broad population, they also introduce challenges of both safety and efficacy. Pelvic floor conditions aren't immune to this challenge. Pessaries are used as a first-line treatment option today. They come in generic shapes and sizes, and they don't account for variation in individual anatomy, variation in physiological condition, and that can lead to non-optimal results. The statistics that you're seeing on this slide, this is published in the literature. 30% of patients will fail a pessary fitting. 50% of patients will stop using a pessary because it's either uncomfortable or because of displacement, which means it fell out of the vagina. Our solution is to move away from standardization to personalization. And we achieve this by, number one, getting accurate measurements of the pelvic floor, that is through the pelvic exam that the provider does. Number two, those measurements are then inputted into a cloud-based portal where we receive them, and then we have an AI model that runs a lot of different simulations to design the pessary that's specific to that individual anatomy. We custom 3D print it and ship it to the provider for the initial pessary fitting. The indications we're targeting, first is going to be pelvic organ prolapse, and we're following that up with stress urinary incontinence. And if you think about the value drivers of what we're trying to deliver to the market here, it's really around improving comfort, reducing displacement, and optimizing the fit of pessaries. If you look at the landscape and how we're differentiated, one axis you have mass-produced, and the other one is, on the other side you have customized, right? So we're making custom 3D printed pessaries that are specific to the anatomy of the patient. And on the other axis, you have static and dynamic. So dynamic is another unique feature of our pessary. And what I mean by that is whether the prolapse is posterior or anterior from the uterus, our pessary is able to displace those pressures laterally where there's more structural support. On the right-hand side of the slide, you're seeing our vaginal canal simulation. And what you can see here is our pessary outperformed a standard ring pessary on stress on the vaginal walls, on displacement and rotation, and we are currently validating this through our feasibility studies. In terms of our roadmap, we've done 5 feasibility studies now, all with unique objectives that we're trying to address. We've had 2 publications released. On the regulatory side, we've completed our pre-submission meeting, and we're gearing up for our pilot clinical study for FDA approval. And then on the commercial side, we've locked up around $1 million in pre-launch contracts, one of those customers being University of California, San Diego Health. We're also in active discussion with Sutter Health to do a pilot with our solution. And lastly, we received a letter of support from Organon, which basically means if we hit key milestones, we have the opportunity for strategic partnerships like a sale and distribution agreement. And then lastly, my ask to the audience here, on the commercial side, so my needs are more commercial focused. And so I'm looking for outside experience and expertise. Primarily one is reimbursement. The second area is the market entry launch strategy that I'm putting together. And third is financial planning and development. So I'll pause there and happy to answer any questions.
Thanks. Great job. So that's what we said? Oh, okay. So that's how it should be done. He's right on time. I think you see he covered all the salient points so that you can start to dig in. So again, we're ready for questions, so please stand, Steve, and tell the audience your name for those that don't know you, and then I'll repeat the question for the recording.
Steve Garko. Can you just kind of explain what some of your market entry challenges are right now? What you're facing?
So the question is some of the key challenges from market entry. Good question.
Yeah, so it's a good question, Steve. So what I'll say is 2 things here. So the one strategy we've already undertaken was, we're a smaller medical device company. We wanted to make sure we had our customer support, distribution infrastructure, post-market surveillance in place. And so one of our entry strategies was to do commercial pilots with customers and do a series of these pilots. So as we ensure we got customer support and distribution, we would start scaling up, right? So one of the challenges we've had is opening up doors at large health systems so we can talk about these commercial pilots and the value of our solution. That's one challenge. The second challenge is when you're selling into health systems, as some of you may have, there's multiple stakeholders required to get alignment with, right? You have the clinician, you have purchasing, you have the GPO, and so having someone that has sold to large healthcare systems in the past and understands that you have to go through VAT committees, helping us understand what that process looks like and putting a roadmap or a frame together so we can execute effectively, I think would be the other key thing we're looking from that piece.
Sometimes I can't help myself, and I want to try and stay on target. So, good question, good answer. Tell the audience what you mean by commercial pilot. What are you looking for? And where does that stand in relation to your FDA? Is that data for you or for FDA or what?
Yeah, so the commercial pilots would be post-FDA approval. We're not really looking to collect clinical data. It's more to ensure from a commercial perspective that we have the right capabilities in place. Last thing we want to do is launch a product and try to scale up as fast as we can, but not be able to answer customer questions or have the right customer support team or not be able to ship product out and not have a long wait time, right? So that's what I mean by commercial pilots, post-FDA approval, piloting with customers that are purchasing our product, and ensuring on our end that we're able to deliver a customer experience that's great for the customer.
Other questions from the audience? Yes.
So similar to that, what challenges do you face from the clinician's point of view and the patient's point of view? You pointed out obvious pros. What are the things that you're anticipating or you're learning would be potential cons for the clinician and for the patient?
Let me repeat. So good question, Catherine. Thanks. So Catherine's focusing in on the challenges, sort of clinical, the pros and cons, and again, we talked about that on one of our calls. When you introduce something, particularly with the device, where you got approval, it's 510K and there's a predicate, getting your FDA approval is not the hard part. It's changing physician and user behavior. That's the essence of the question. So how are you going to do that?
Yeah, so it's a good question, and so I'm going to harp back on that, but I want to answer specifically your question. One of the key challenges we've heard from clinicians, right, it is a newer process. It's not completely different from what they're doing today. And one of the challenges we've heard is, how do I know I'm taking these measurements correctly? And what happens if I get a pessary and it's not working for the patient, right? And so we're working through, well, how do we address that, right? How can we show them either through evidence, right, that doing the measurements as we're training will allow us to print a pessary that will work for your patient, but two, giving them the confidence where if maybe they don't take those accurate measurements and the pessary doesn't work, having a program where we can either have them send it back and we restrip a new pessary, and we're still thinking through what that looks like commercially, but that's one of the key challenges we've had. To Dr. Gould's point, right, how do you convince clinicians to use your product versus what they're using today? And from a commercial perspective, I think there's three ways we can differentiate, right? We can differentiate on the clinical evidence that we provide, we can differentiate on the ease of use of our product, and we can differentiate on price. Price, we don't want to do because we're creating a lot of value here. We want to capture that value, and so we're focused on really generating great evidence to show the superiority of our product and also the ease of use. And I don't want to get into the details of how our pessary is easier to manage for patients versus current pessaries today, but if there's time, I can speak to that as well.
So good. So I love the notion of personalization. I think we all do, particularly in healthcare. And not to sound cynical, we talked about this. You know, we hear all this about generative AI and everything else. And the idea of using your fingers in a glove seems a little low tech. But tell us again why you think that's going to give this accurate personalization.
Yeah, it's a great question. So we looked at other avenues to get those measurements. We were thinking about a transvaginal ultrasound. The challenge is that clinicians, especially in office, weren't willing to make the investment to bring that device into their office. And so the measurement glove, which we'll also be providing to providers, allows them to get the measurements that we need to run our models and do the custom 3D print. And it's a low-cost barrier of entry for them to use our product.
Great. Next question. Yes?
Yeah.
Healthcare provider or the patient?
Okay. Yeah, good question. So Jeff asked, once the sale is, quote, made, who's actually paying for it, right?
Yeah. So it's a good question, and I can tell you where we're at right now is it would be the provider or the system, right? They would purchase the pessary, And then if we go through the reimbursement channel, right, there is a code for pessaries that they could leverage. If we don't go through the reimbursement channel and want to make it a cash pay or out-of-pocket device, they would then charge the patient a list price that we would give them. Just to finish the thought, though, that's the thinking right now. Strategically, we are looking at ways to make this more direct-to-consumer focused and really bypassing some of those challenges as well.
Great. Next question. Yes.
Hi, Christine Rowan. Question, what happens when it fails today? And how will you change?
So, great question. Christine asked, what you mean when their device fails? I want to draw out. We talked about it's not just one and done, right?
Yeah.
There's trial, and you will do refitting. So, but
Yeah.
tease out her question.
Yeah, so I'll start with today when pessaries fail, right?
Well, what is failure? What's the definition of failure?
So failure could be it's not comfortable. Failure could be it doesn't stay in place. Failure could be it caused an erosion or a bleed. So there's multiple types.
Or you can still get prolapse?
Yeah, you'll still get prolapse, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But one of the key challenges is there is this trial and error process of fittings today, which we are trying to solve. Now, harping back what I was saying is, if we custom print the pessary, ship it to the physician for the initial fitting, right? We're gathering the evidence to show that it shouldn't fail in the patient, but if it does, right? Because there's always a risk that it may. Commercially, we're looking at what we can do to alleviate that pain, right? And one thing that we were discussing was having an opportunity for the clinician to send us the pessary back, resubmit measurements, and we would send them a new pessary at no cost to ensure it's the one that matches or meets the patient's needs. Again, I think this is an area where we have a thought of what it looks like, but in terms of actually executing it and putting a strategy in place, still have work to do.
Great. We have time probably for one more question. Oh, I got to keep looking over here. Sorry.
Mike Bloom, Loyola University of Chicago. You keep using we, so I want to know who are sort of your key team members and that you all develop the technology, how did we come about?
Okay, good question. So Mike asked, who is the we that is referring to? What's the team? How is it developed? A little bit of the background.
Yeah. So I'll do my best to answer this. I joined the organization not too many months ago, but our team.
So it's they.
So it's a team of we have engineers as well as quality and regulatory and clinical, and then there's 3 co-founders on our team. One is Inara, who couldn't make it today. And we have a AI specialist who's our other co-founder, and then our last co-founder is actually a urogynecologist who's our chief medical officer. So when I say we, I like to give credit to the team for all the work that's being done, and that's who I'm speaking about.
Right on time. Thank you. Good job. Thank you. Thank the audience. You
Right,
behaved,
thank you.
followed the rules. You got the hang of it. All right.
I know a few folks trickled in a little late. You're welcome to use this time to find a seat in the audience. Thank you.
So I got to get. So the number 2 presentation is Aurora, but Pierre is joining us as a guest presenter.
Thank you.
So you didn't go through the rehearsal, right?
No, Claire did.
All right.
She got grilled.
All right. So we're going to see. He's got secondhand training here.
I guess microphone is working, right? Can you hear me? Okay. Awesome. Thanks everyone for being here. I'm replacing my colleague Claire, CEO, and Pierre, the Chief Product Officer. And I'm going to talk to you today about the product Loop that we are developing and aiming to bring to market early next year. Who knows about PCOS, polycystic ovary syndrome? Raise your hand if you ever heard of it. So maybe 10, 15%? It's kind of sad when you think it's the number 1 cause of infertility in women. We always say that if it was a man's problem, we actually probably would have solved that issue about a century ago. It is a condition that comes with a very long list of healthcare effects. They are, for example, 50% of those women we will have diabetes 2 before the age of 40. Much higher risk of cancer, cardiac conditions, skin problems, etc., etc., etc. Today, most of those patients, they're not receiving the treatments they deserve, but also doctors often don't even know how to handle those patients. Because the two main line of treatments are typically pharmacological, which is birth control pills, which sounds pretty hard to give to a patient who tries to conceive, and 2, metformin, which is a drug that is given to patients that are typically affected by diabetes. With Loop, we are the first medical device aimed to those patients that, again, is planned to be in the market early next year. The very, very first solution that will be localized treatments in order to attenuate the symptoms. We're not claiming that we're going to cure that conditions. No one really knows how to do that. But we see this device as a companion device in order to elevate the symptoms. I won't extend on how does it work, but it's simply positioning on your lower abdominal area and tapping into the nerve endings that are connected to the ovaries. That actually has an effect on the insulin levels that in turns also impact the androgen levels in the body. I'm very happy to send you more information and lots of documentation about the research conducted in that space, including some of the testing that we have done in human to demonstrate the efficacy of that device. So telling you a bit more about our journey, with that device, our goal is to partner with as many companies as possible in the women's health space. We see that device as the gateway to access that PCOS community and those patients that today are not receiving the treatments that they deserve. Through those partners that can be focusing, for example, on nutrition, that can be focusing on other aspects and holistic approaches that can benefit those patients, we aim to create a community and a referral process that will build an ecosystem and provide us with the data to better understand not only what works and what doesn't work for those patients, but also to understand what phenotypes actually are they on. There are so far 8 phenotypes associated to PCOS. What if we could go to a pharma company that provides metformin today and tell them, actually your drug works better for those patients? And we collect those data because they use those devices on a regular basis, and we have an app that comes with it that gets all the information from them. Our goal is to launch the digital MVP with that device early next year. Behind this, there will be clinical data that we are aiming to also provide. So you will see we are looking for partners in the sector of endocrinology and specialists that understand women's health. And then we also, as part of this, building a world-class group of advisors. There are a few people in the US, actually, that understand PCOS. There's about 100 specialists only. And we are hoping to connect with as many as possible to them because that will enable basically the distribution a bit further to the patients. I should mention that this device, we are aiming to get it reimbursed, but it will be an over-the-counter device because accessibility is key. And we believe that today, women are typically trying to find solutions by themselves more than relying exclusively on the doctors to get the treatments they need. So I'm here in front of you today because part of this year is to transition that prototype into manufacturing. We are one iteration away to submitting it to the FDA, and we want to commence our clinical study ideally in the US this year. We are looking for a lead to do our seed round. So as part of that, we would like to get as many insight on the ecosystem in Chicago and understanding if it's the right place for us to find the lead. Connection to partners, especially in terms of reimbursement and how we can manage the OTC and reimbursement aspects, and just understanding better how we can build our community here. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Good job. Okay. Questions? Yes. Sorry, I keep.
Trying to figure out the indication. Harold, sorry, Harold Stolzer. Pain, is that the measurement scale that you're planning on taking?
So can I put that in, so the question that Harold asked was, is pain the symptom? I just want to ask you to answer the following, which we discussed in the prep session. So you nicely listed the symptoms of PCOS, and you said we're not curing. What wasn't clear, which is our prep session, what are you trying to alleviate? I think that's the basis of Harold's question. Right.
Yeah. So it's a good question, and that's part of the challenge with PCOS, because you have many different phenotypes, and depending on those
I'm going to
phenotypes.
pin you down.
Yeah.
You got a product, you want to come to market. You should be able to tell us, we're going to alleviate this, and this is how we're going to measure it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you can't do that, that's all right. But if you can, tell us.
Yeah. The symptoms that you will be able to measure in order to measure the alleviation of that will be things like hirsutism, skin conditions. You'll be able to see that the patients also have a better facilities to manage the body weights. You will see that we don't want to make the claims that they will be able to get pregnant, because we are not stepping into this and we'll never compete with IVF. But we shall see over time that most patients using those symptoms will have facilities to get pregnant as well.
Well, I don't like doing this. Are you satisfied with that answer? If not, let's push him a little. He took the bait. Somebody else want to ask, follow up on that? Yeah, let's follow up. Somebody else? Yes.
Hi, Armand. Thank you for presenting. One, and I know I don't want to derail it, and at the beginning you sort of glossed over the science of it, but I think it would be a little helpful to kind of get an overview, given that most PCOS treatments are currently either medication or more invasive interventions. What exactly is the technology, and then how is that having, actually affecting sort of body function?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question, and in the prep we said this is the place to do that. So let me help you since you're on the call. I'm not sure everybody followed. This is a device that goes on the abdomen. Tell us how it works. It's sending an electrical shock. Tell us how it's powered. Tell us what it's actually doing, what you know about the underlying mechanism of action, and the results. That's what we want to know. And this is the time to do it.
Yep. So the exact mechanism of action is actually still not understood. It is still something that is being researched. The same way that when you think about overactive bladder and how they stimulate the dorsal tibial nerve, it helps control the urge to urinate. Same happens with this device that sits on the lower abdominal area. What is believed so far is that there's a short-term and a long-term effect. The short-term effect is only muscular and helps basically the contraction of the muscles around the ovaries, that then stimulates the uptake of the insulin. The long-term effect is believed electrically. Yeah. The long-term effect I believe to be actually similar to overactive bladder, which is basically some of the nerve ending that then communicate back to the midbrain and cerebellum, that somehow do a bit of a reset, that send back the signals to the ovaries and modulates more of the hormonal levels associated to the androgen. If that makes sense.
So your slide says you want FDA clearance pain. Tell us, sorry, for the audience, I'm picking up on the FDA clearance for pain. Is this going to be a 510K? What's the predicate, and how are you going to measure?
Yeah, so we are aiming to go for a 510K approach as well. There are existing predicates, and that's exactly why we go for pain first, because it's a much faster process that doesn't actually require us to have clinical data to go to market with the pain approach. Now,
so what's the predicate? Is it TENS?
It's similar to TENS device, but specifically for women's health. Okay. So if you look at TENS, there's 12 other subcategories under that. Okay. We are tapping into one of those.
All right. Okay.
Down the line, if I can just add,
sure.
This is where the clinical study comes in. So we can use our existing device, typically for pain related to women's health, to then do a clinical study with that device, get the data, and go to the FDA, get the first iteration amended or submit a new indications to get approval also for PCOS.
So you're looking for the quickest path to market, and then you intend to do further clinical studies to add.
Correct.
Okay, good. Other questions? Yes, Christine.
Hi, Christine again. Thanks, can you talk a little bit about the patient journey with PCOS and where your device fits in?
The question is, tell us about the patient journey and where for PCOS and where the device fits in.
Mm-hmm. Good question. So The first step is to get diagnosed. And we estimate that today there's about 25% of the patients affected by that condition that have been diagnosed. So 1 woman out of 5 affected by it, only 25% diagnosed. Many of them will actually self-diagnosed. And when they look at the list of symptoms they have, they will assume they have PCOS, and that's it. After that, they typically go see the doctors. They will often find doctors that don't understand how to treat PCOS. Many of them, I had patients coming to me saying, doctors told me I have PCOS, but that I just have to live with it. Some people say, oh, you just have to exercise more and eat better. This is how many doctors understand PCOS. And so they will fall back into finding solutions for themselves, often online, looking at a lot of networks and organizations out there that help patients affected by PCOS to find solutions by themselves. And that's why for us, we are actually focusing on the OTC route, because we believe we will come at that point where by working with PCOS Challenge, for example, which is the largest organization in the US, they will be able to see that there's a flagship device that is newly arrived that can help alleviate some of the symptoms.
Another question? Okay, yes.
Hi, Mary, I work at CVS Health. I've heard a little bit about the over-the-channel or over-the-counter market. It can be quite competitive, especially with things like shelf space and competitive advantage and then private labels that people will just copy you and have a patent. How do you think about distribution channels, or at least where you want to get footholds? Is it online, is it in stores, is it in a specific market?
Great question. I was going to try and ask it, so I'm glad you did. So the question was from someone at CVS Health who said, you're talking about over-the-counter consumer. She's saying, tell us how you're thinking about doing that. That's really hard. You got to get shelf space. You got to get distribution, everything else. Great question.
No, it's a great question, and that question comes often. I was just coming back from Hong Kong, where the idea of copying device is there all the time. So totally feel the stress around this. That's why we're also looking for people that can help us first with the reimbursement route and understand how we can differentiate our device to be reimbursed for very specific conditions that we are targeting. In terms of distributions, for example, we have an agreement with an online pharmacy in Quebec to help us distribute that device, and they will chip in $1 million to start launching it. So partnering with pharmacies is definitely one. Our approach is B2B2C and B2C, so we want to be able to, again, provide that product directly online as well. That's how many of the TENS devices, especially the ones related to women's health, are currently distributed. How do we differentiate, to answer your questions, compared to the other devices out there, and in terms of copy and patents, etc.? Well, we can tell you that lots of the devices out there have not done any type of clinical study. And when you measure the output of what they say they do and what they actually do, it's totally different. And so we know that, and that's why our goal is to also work with clinicians to have solid clinical data that we can attach to that device, that we can communicate to these patients' organizations that work with us in order to really reinforce the fact that our device is unique. Will there be people trying to copy it? Absolutely. Absolutely, we can't stop that. But it's really about differentiating ourselves on the efficacy and then also on the community side. We just don't want to be a device. We want to be a place also with the application and the different treatments modalities that we can refer them to be a place where patients go. And that's also part of how we're going to be able to differentiate ourselves.
What's the projected price?
The price for the stimulator, we are looking at about $250 for the stimulator.
And how long does it last?
3 years, yeah. And then the patch, we are looking at $7 to $8 per patch. The patch is used about 5 to 10 times before it needs to be replaced. So we are looking at one patch every month or so.
And it's only on for how many days?
So it's actually on the patients for 3 times a week, about 30 minutes of stimulation when it's for PCOS. When it's for pain, for the first indication, it's just when the patient is affected by pain.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Good.
Thank you.
And nice job filling in. Thank you. Yep. The third presentation is Pragmaclin, Bronwyn.
I'm short, so I'll stand over here. Make sure the mic works first. I'm good? Perfect. Hello, everybody. My name is Bronwyn Bridges, and I am the CEO and co-founder of Pragmaclin. Before I tell you a little bit about where Pragmaclin is today, though, I'd like to tell you about our story. So, I'm going to tell you about Gord. He was an avid runner his entire life until his 50s, where he notices gait and slowness occurring while running. He brushes it off as age-related symptoms, as sadly many people do, until he finally goes to seek help and is told it could be a 1 to 2 year wait time to see general neurology. Gord is now one of the 10 million people who have been subjectively diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. Gord, like many others as well, only sees his neurologist for 30 minutes once a year. Sadly, cases are constantly doubling, and Gord is lucky to have a movement disorder specialist as a neurologist. However, only 9% of Parkinson's patients are actually seeing that specialty practice. This also increases the cost burden for Parkinson's disease, and in the US alone is $52 billion. These subjective assessments that are currently done result in a neurologist standing in front of the patient, eyeballing, and then assessing the patient based off of what they view. This does mean, though, that 25% of the cases are being misdiagnosed or mistreated, and also means that we're relying on that specialty practice, which increases those wait times. And so, myself, I am a Parkinson's researcher in the pharmacology space with my PhD, and I decided to take a passion with Gord from a project to a company. And so now Pragmaclin has created a clinical decision support tool that provides real-time motion capture assessments from within the clinic. Here you'll see our two pieces of the PRIM software, as we call it. You'll see the motor assessments where Gord's hand is up in front of the camera that is able to assess in real time the motion captures, but then also our free software that we've released for patients and caregivers to be able to assess the self-managed assessments from home. That is not the motor symptoms, that is just self-reported surveys, but it allows them to be able to then provide that data to the clinician. Our main piece of the software, though, that we're actually targeting to enter the market with is what you see here on the roller. This PRIM assessment is able to provide those consistent symptom monitorings from home with the at-home piece, but then does those weekly surveys uploaded to this portal. We're providing that comprehensive, accessible data and notifications for clinicians, patients, and other caregivers. What we're doing is we have proprietary AI algorithms that are able to offer the superior accuracy in comparison to clinicians, but also to other softwares that are out there. This means that that objective assessment of finger tapping, walking, sitting, standing, tremor, and more can be assessed in real time without the help of the neurologist. From here, we're able to see accurate assessments in just 11 minutes from our usability studies we've completed in market. We're also increasing that patient throughput, so increasing the clinic's reimbursement in some markets, but in Canadian healthcare, we're reducing the wait times, which is a little bit of a value proposition. We're looking at changing how we talk about it. We're providing the accurate assessments, which then impacts that treatment plan as well, and that's tackling the big problem of over-medication that happens for patients. I've actually heard a lot of stories from doing this research of patients that were quickly diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, only to find out after being on medications for several years that have impacted them in other ways, they actually didn't have Parkinson's. We're hoping to be able to increase the accuracy of those assessments so people are actually being assessed properly and not put on medications they don't need to be. What makes us different? There's currently wearables and other devices that are used at home. They're more of a consumer market, or they're sold to the clinic and then the clinic says it's too much data for them to actually be able to assess. With our 3D real-time cameras, we're able to provide the assessment from within the clinic and then show what we call a report card for the clinician, where it then scores the patient on each and every symptom so they can then accurately track and monitor and provide better physiotherapy and treatment plans for the individual. We currently have leveraged $1.5 million completely non-dilutive funding from the Government of Canada, who's fantastic, but also from pitch competitions across the world that have helped us to get also world-class support. This is from incubators, accelerators, and also healthcare systems who are now helping us to pilot and test and validate us across the market. We're on the pre-seed to seed stage with lots of pitch competition wins that have also included awards to gain us traction, and we're advancing towards our FDA approval. We have our pre-submission meeting just next month, and we're looking forward to going into that to find out our regulatory pathway for sure. But we have gone in approaching them as a 510K software as a medical device for a clinician decision support tool. This is to, as we said, get to market faster, but then also be able to possibly go back as a diagnostic tool once we're validated in the market. With PRIMS, we'll be sold as an annual SaaS subscription with one-time hardware, and that's based on per-patient models. We currently have a lead offer for our investment round, but we're seeking other investment and other clinical partners. And part of that ask is that with that round, the mentors we're looking for are to help with regulatory reimbursement, more on our strategy and pricing, partnerships, and overall business growth and strategy. So if you have any expertise, I'd love to take any questions you have, but also look forward to working with some of you. Thank you.
Nice job. Really well done. Okay, the floor is open for questions. Yes.
I understand enough. So you talked about the real shortage of specialists in this field, and I think most of us know somebody who's living with that. And you did address that this, the service that you're providing is much more streamlined and easy to grasp at a glance. Do you anticipate a challenge, though, still with this limited set of specialists, that it will still be too much and the information will go unused? Do you see other possible channels besides either the specialist or the patient?
So the question is, having highlighted the shortage of Parkinson's specialists, you're going to generate additional data. They still need to see a doctor, and how are you going to avoid just moving the backlog forward? They still need to get in the doctor, right? Is that okay?
Yeah, great question. I think one thing is that we are post-diagnosis, like I said, going in as that clinical decision support. It does provide that.
I want you to expand on that, because you and I talked about it, and I want
Yeah.
to make sure everybody else. I'm going to ask you a question. Does anybody think she's making the diagnosis of Parkinson's? Anyone? Anyone? Okay, good. So decision support, make sure everybody knows what that is. And I want the audience to follow through this, okay?
Sure. Clinical decision support in the sense that we are doing the assessment the neurologist would do. However, we provide a data score that we've calculated based off of validation with clinicians. And then that data has to be reviewed by a clinician in order to make any treatment decision or plans. So not going in diagnostic because we're not telling the patient that they have Parkinson's. They already know they have Parkinson's. But what we are doing is providing more accurate information for the clinician to then give better treatment decisions, physiotherapy, based on an individualized treatment plan.
So I have a trick question.
Of course.
Do you think you can make it? I know you're not going to market it. You're not going to ask for a label. Do you think you can make the diagnosis based on your assessment?
Are we behind closed doors?
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we won't be.
No.
The FDA is here.
We got it.
The plan is that we will go back and we will resubmit. But the biggest thing is trust and buy-in for clinicians, and to make sure that they actually believe and it is validated fully enough that they can say that has helped and supported the diagnostic enough to diagnose.
Okay.
It is such a subjective field that how do you accustom them to being okay with the software doing part of the job and providing that information for them?
Okay. Yes.
Hi, thanks again. One, I think maybe it'd be helpful if we could sort of re-explain the business model in the U.S. at least, because my understanding, the neurologists that I work with, especially the movement specialists, they're slammed. And the last thing they need is another software that's going to come in that they're paying for, it seems like, as a SaaS. That doesn't necessarily improve their time. They see the value to patients, but it might not be valuable to them.
Yep.
What is the business model? Is it to mainly work with integrated providers like Geisinger and Kaiser, or to work with payers? Because I guess I don't see it with providers.
What do you do when you work with physicians?
I'm a med student.
You're a med student. Okay. All right. So the question's a good question. Go through the business model again, because he's saying neurologists, physicians in general, neurologists are already overwhelmed with software, and now you got something else. How are they going to figure out if this is worth it or it's not worth their time? So what's the business model?
Yeah, great question. Because we've talked to people in other markets, the Canadian market, the US market, they're all totally different. And so it's trying to piece that all together. With the US conversations, we thought that coming to the US, healthcare is perfect because you can just buy healthcare, get in faster because we wait 4 years back home. However, that's not the case. And when we went to Maine, the main neurologist that we work with, he's doing our pivotal FDA study. And his value of why he wanted to do the research with us is because he has 500 patients and a 2-year wait list. He said if we can get in there and we can help then increase the scope of the other people in his clinic so that he's not the only one doing those assessments, because that 9% where it's only his eyes that are able to actually then do the assessments with patients, he wants to expand the scope of his nurse practitioners, his general doctors, et cetera, so that for the follow-up assessments where it's not as important, he does diagnosis, but they can do follow-up assessments and he can just provide a treatment plan. So it's increasing that
What
scope.
is the FDA study?
What is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a 40-patient study with Maine Health System in Maine. Every time I say that, it's a tongue twister, but in Maine with them. So what we're doing is the software is assessing the patient, and the doctor is also assessing the patient, and we're comparing the scoring from his scoring to our scoring to ensure the accuracy of the assessment.
And have you agreed upon outcomes with FDA? How good you have to be?
We have the pre-sub next month,
Okay.
so we have our questions prepped for them
Okay.
to clarify it, but we
Okay.
do have the full protocol for them.
This whole issue of software as a medical device, there was a lot of enthusiasm a year or two ago, particularly for PDTs, prescription digital therapeutics. It's sort of fallen off the chart. You're not actually a PDT, right?
No.
No.
And to touch on too, the payment model as well, subscription, yes, because the hospital can now either see more, they can take their choice.
Yep.
They could see more patients, or they can then bill differently. So right now there's a lot of unused codes in this space because they don't have time. And so there's actually complex codes that don't get used, neuro codes that don't get used. And so we've actually done some work with consultants about reimbursement model and how we can approach them for
Okay.
coding.
Good. Other questions? So the FDA, you're going to use are you a de novo?
Yeah.
Or so the pathways.
I say that like yes, because it's
yeah,
something
I
we're
know.
trying to still kind of
So
get
you're
to.
thinking 510K. This is not no need to do a PMA like a big drug trial. 510K uses a predicate, and there's this category for those that don't know called de novo, which is you got to get some patient data, and you think you're in that category.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the label, if you get what you want, it'd say what? This is approved for what?
We have it currently listed as intended use is to assess a patient, and then it very clearly states does not do a diagnostic. So it still requires the clinician
Assess the
follow-up.
patient.
Yeah.
So the physician uses the patient.
Correct.
And tell us a little, I want to expand on the business model, the pricing, who's going to pay.
Yeah. Still in the works.
Yep.
Part of what we're looking for
You
in
know,
mentorship.
we tell all the companies and we tell the mentors, if you had all the answers, you wouldn't be
We
here.
wouldn't be here. You're right.
Yeah.
You're
So
right.
don't. We ask the questions.
Ask me
It's
the
not a
tough
problem
ones,
if you
it's
don't have
okay.
the answer.
It's
right.
okay. You can ask all the tough ones. I was talking about business model, and with the reimbursement codes we've gotten, we've really tried to build out like our ROI economic analysis on how much money they could make, how much money they can save. The codes that currently exist in this space are anywhere between 100 to like 250 when you break them up
For
per
what?
for
For-
one assessment of 30
one
minutes.
assessment.
Yeah.
So this isn't going to be software as a service where you do it as sort of an enterprise value, like so many users, or you're thinking all that through?
We're currently thinking it through. There is the tiered model. There's been pushback both ways. One of tiered model, you have over 50 patients, you have over 100 patients, and you pay like a set amount. Or there's the per use case where every time the system gets used, you can then bill and we get paid that way.
Okay.
We would prefer the other way because then you really have to try and convince people to constantly be using it. But sometimes that's a push for if they don't spend it all.
Yeah. Other questions? I can keep going, but yes.
Kevin Donnelly. Back on the validation question, so when you were talking about the patient doing the exercise, like the finger tapping or whatever, validation against a clinician, is that an actual exercise like MDS?
That's exactly,
Okay.
yep.
Is that what you used?
It's digitizing the MDS
So the
assessment.
question was, is there a validated system that you're using to score things when you do it? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
What-
yeah, to touch on MDS, one of our key opinion leaders we work with in the UK is the chair of the MDS Society, so super helpful in giving kind of opinions. But what we have very quickly learned is you go from neurologists who maybe have 10, 15 minutes with the patient, they are not doing that whole MDS scale, all the way to clinical research and clinical trials where they're spending the entire thing start to finish in order. And so when we built the software, we did it as like a plug and play that you can take out or put in and move around tests so that it fits better with clinical flow. So if they don't do certain tests, that's fine, you can take them out, or if you want to add them in. And what it does is allows us to then scale into other movement disorders, so stroke, Huntington's, et cetera, where you can then add in different tests in that way as well.
Okay, so I got a last question. So I have a friend who's a very accomplished neurologist, was in academia at Columbia, and now has a very high-end neurology practice on Park Ave in New York. Can't get in to see her. Is that a target? Is she of interest, or are you really targeting health systems and more? I don't know how many others in her practice.
Mm-hmm.
Is it the practitioner? She's in private practice,
Mm-hmm.
makes a fortune in New York, right?
Yeah.
But that's not the real world. Or are you targeting the health systems and more integrated sales?
We've kind of tested both opportunities, what one looks better. It's definitely probably faster to get into the private space because it's a faster sales cycle, but the healthcare systems are
And
really struggling.
how would she manage that? Would she pass that cost on?
Yeah, she would either pass the cost on through the insurance providers that will actually pay for some of it, but also then there's if she can see more patients, she can monetize on it as well.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
great. All right, great job, thanks.
Thank you.
So I said it after the first, not the second. Sign up. Sign up if you're interested. Sign up for the second and the third if you're interested. And remember, at the end, prioritize, and we will only put you on one team. We love it when people sign up for multiple ones because it gives us more options. Okay. Marmette's going to close with Strata Health.
Okay, I am Marmette Horton. I am the Senior Vice President and General Manager for Strata Health in the U.S. CMS reports that poor transitions of care is a $26 billion problem in the U.S. With poor patient outcomes and significant costs to providers, payers, and patients alike being factored into huge financial loss stemming from wasted time and frustrations, patient leakage or inappropriate provider placement, and the impact of readmissions on hospitals and health systems. Strata Health seeks to solve this problem through our comprehensive platform to manage transitions of care. It begins with Strata Search, which is a bedside interactive tool for patients that allows you to curate a custom list of providers based on a patient's unique needs. Then we have our Strata Sign platform, which is a bedside tool to capture signatures and automate posting those documents back to the EHR, alleviating the manual task that we see so often today. Finally, we work in with Strata Send, which is a complete referral management platform that works in conjunction with the other two tools and allows us to start to automate that transition process. This becomes a win-win-win for patients, providers, and payers alike. As we start working through decreasing length of stay and avoidable delays, eliminating inappropriate referrals, reducing patient leakage and readmissions, and addressing this overburdening that we see with staff burnout by automating this process and supporting our clinicians in working at the top of their license versus the very manual clerical process of sending a referral today. As we do this, we increase our efficiency, patient engagement, compliance, and focus on automating some clinical decision support and communication to manage transitions. This is a highly competitive space in the US. So at Strata, we work to differentiate ourselves through several different ways. First of all, through our flexible integration. Many of our competitors in the space are solely focused on looking at acute to post-acute transitions. At Strata, we have our flexible integration open platform that allows us to manage transitions up or downstream without limitations. We've also put into place some AI-powered matching algorithms that allow us to get patients to the right place at the right time. Receivers of referrals can assign attributes to their services or beds that then matches with a patient's unique needs, cutting out a lot of the noise that we see today when we have over 85,000 providers that can be in this space, getting it down to a much more manageable place. We've also invested quite a bit in our business intelligence platform, focusing on identifying trends and really supporting process improvement. And very different from our competitors, we do have a proven global success in this space. We were founded in Canada through angel investors and later expanded the business to the UK. Having created a profitable business, Polaris Partners actually bought out many of the original investors without infusion of additional growth capital. In 2020, we acquired a US business, which I was part of, to support entry into the US, and since that time, we have experienced a plateau in revenue as we struggle to build momentum in the US. Of note, in 2022, Honor Health became our first US customer to go live on the integrated platform, and today we have 7 hospitals utilizing the complete solution. We do have documented success to provide the value of our platform with customers. As seen here, we've pulled data from all markets highlighting improvements in timing of transitions through faster acceptance and decreased delays. Our goals for participating in the program include assistance with honing target market segmentation, fine-tuning our messaging, optimizing our pricing models, and strengthening sales channels to grow the US business. To meet these, we have identified the following desired skill sets to assist in creating a better go-to-market strategy with business planning and modeling, financial planning, market research, and strategy, as well as product analysis. With that, I'm actually going to have Kevin Jones come up, and we are happy to answer any questions you may have for us.
Thanks. Nice job. I got to start with the mea culpa. So pull out your program. You'd think after doing this 10 years in a row, I'd get it right. So the program says Stephen Collins, you had Stephen. It says Steve Gould, you had me. And I forgot to introduce Samir Ahmed, who's the consul and senior trade commissioner. My deep apologies. I can't believe this, right? And we will do that. He will close the program, which is probably better because he can bring everything together. I'm really sorry. And you're very gracious. Nice presentation. Okay, let's kick off the Q&A. Is there a hand? We've got the same people all the time. Catherine.
So how do you integrate with EHR? There's various choices if you just think about the
So we're fully flexible.
Question is, how do you integrate with the EMRs?
Fully flexible. We have the most recent Smart on Fire integration options that has been validated by both Epic and Cerner, and that can go all the way down to just a basic ADT feed to be able to pull in the patient demographics and the print driver that we can put in place to print to our systems. So we really work with our customers to identify what best meets their needs.
Christine?
Yeah, Christine Rollins. So it sounds great. You can do everything, right? But where do people start with you, and why would they pick you to work with? Like, why did I help?
Great question. So the question is, it sounds great. Where do you start, and why would people pick you? So I asked the question, why are you different? Because you give a great presentation. I believe everything you say, but this is a story that we hear a lot of stories like this. So why are you different?
So to start with, why did Honor Health pick us? When Strata acquired the existing US business, we came to the table with 200 active customers that use our Strata search platform. and Honor Health was one of those. So we had a great relationship, and one of the things that we really have focused on going in as a partner and making sure that our solution fits in their workflow. So many in this space walk in with their box and expect that these departments fit into their workflow instead of vice versa. I personally come from that space with the clinical background and have a lot of those relationships and understand that workflow, and am able to bring that to the table in a consultative approach as well.
Yes, you had. Steve, go ahead.
Steve Krakow, you say you're struggling to build momentum. What are the things that are causing you to struggle? Why do you think you're struggling?
Well, let's start with
So
COVID.
the question is, they said they're struggling to sort of build momentum, and the question is why? What is the challenge or limiting factor?
We'll start with COVID. The acquisition happened 1 month before the pandemic started, and it really threw a wrench in getting that off straight momentum. I think that we have struggled with getting our message transitioned from single payer systems to the US as well, and how we can support that. What I found in single payer systems, the care paths tend to be very limited and linear, where in the US it's more of a, we do everything within one platform and moving that through. So that's just really been part of that issue that we have encountered. We spent quite a bit of time working on integrating the existing technology at Strata and the acquired organization as well, which has allowed us to get a little bit more foothold. But now in this just very competitive space, we're floundering a little bit with needing some guidance, with having a way to get that a little cleaner and crisper in our go-to-market.
I think pricing's a big component
Pricing
there
is,
as well.
yeah, that's a great point. We've really struggled with that as well in such a competitive space.
So you're higher then? Is that what you mean?
We were told that we were higher, yes. So we have made some tweaks and continue to reevaluate.
Okay. Did you have another question? No, okay. Anyone else? Oh, yes. Jeff.
Talk about who the primary stakeholders are for your system that you're selling, and then what data do you have that kind of helps them understand the advantages?
So the question is, who are the primary stakeholders and how do you help them? But Jeff, flesh out, what do you mean by stakeholders?
The people that are making the decision to purchase.
The buyers. Who's your buyer? Okay.
Who are they? How do you get to them?
Yeah. Because I could say the patients are stakeholders because they're going to benefit, right?
Yeah.
So it's who's the payer? Okay.
So from a buyer perspective, we actually go to senders and receivers of referrals. We have a couple different models, and we have both basic free and paid premium products built within our platform. For the primary sender that we have been targeting, that would be hospital case management departments, as they are the ones that manage the transition of care. So we target getting in front of case managers, directors, VPs from that regard. From a post-acute side, with this directory of providers that we're able to curate these custom lists, they actually have the opportunity to do point-of-care marketing and purchase premium listings that they're able to present to patients while they're making the decision. Patients get choice when they are transitioning, and it supports that compliance piece, but allows them to put their best foot forward. So whenever we go into a new space, we do outreach to all of the receivers of referrals at the same time.
Is this the Polaris in Boston, the venture firm in Boston?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's a high quality firm. So they bought out your angels in 2000. That's 10 years ago.
Yes.
Have they put more money in?
There has been no growth revenue added. No.
Are they on the board?
Yes.
Are they satisfied? I mean, I would think I'm trying to be positive. I mean, that's a high credential to have Polaris as an investor.
I would say if they were very satisfied, we probably wouldn't be standing in front of this fine group today.
Yeah, I mean, they got a lot of clout. So we're delighted you're here, but I mean, I would think they're connected and they ought to be able to really give you some oomph.
So they've been with us longer than Polaris normally goes in these
I would
situations.
think.
And there is an exit strategy that they're looking for.
Okay. All right. Other questions? Yes.
Hi, Marvin. Who bears the cost of the client outcome if it doesn't happen, 28% shorter acceptance, et cetera? Who bears the cost of that besides the patient? Or who could get increased revenue?
So the question is, who bears the cost, and flesh out a little the economics. So we've been dancing around, is the hospital going to pay? Is a physician referrer going to pay? Give us a little more details. I'm thinking too, you said it's the referrers and the receivers. So so if you have, let's go back to my Park Ave neurologist, right, story. So if she could be both. She could be a referrer and a receiver. So she wants to refer a patient to a cardiologist. You're saying that this will help her, and she's going to get more patients because of this, and she's going to pay to send patients out? That doesn't make sense.
So when you look at it from a hospital perspective.
Hospital's different.
Yes, and that is our primary target.
Okay.
And when we look at the neurologist, I think that would be more applicable within an integrated health system.
Okay.
Where they're sending and we're automating those processes because they're paying staff to do it today.
Okay. The story doesn't. You can tell that story, I think, more clearly than is coming out. You may know that. Yeah. Okay.
It's an area that, like I said, we're trying to refine this very big message down, and that's an area that we definitely need assistance with.
Yeah. The challenge that, and this has come up in several of these things tonight. I mean, modern technology is great. It can do a lot of things, but it's a business, and we understand the companies want to make money, and we support that, but somebody's got to pay for it, and there's got to be a value to them and a return on the investment, right? Okay. This one's hard because, I know that and I suspect everyone here thinks, and you go in a hospital, they got armies of people trying to do discharge planning and all these services, and you're saying you can do it better than they can, or supplement them, or what?
We're saying we can automate the clerical processes that hospitals are paying RN wages to do today.
Okay.
And we can provide some clinical decision support so that when they're sending to the place that's going to get the best care, reduce the chance of readmission.
And back in your slide on validation, have you shown a cost reduction? I know you had shorter times and all that. 30% faster. What's here about revenue? What's the financial?
So the financial there is one of the issues that we're seeing in hospitals today is the delays that occur when transitioning a patient out is increasing the length of stay. Length of stay goes up. If you're paid off a DRG, you get X number of dollars, whether the patient's there 3 days or 15 days.
So if you cut 6.8 days off, the hospital comes out ahead.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because
so that's why they pay.
Yes.
Those are the aspects that are going to move the needle, I think. Right. Okay. Thanks to you. Thanks to all of you.
Thank you.
Nice job, everybody. Did really all the presentations were terrific, on time, direct, stimulated lots of interest. The audience was great. I appreciate all of that. And now, again, I'm going to beat myself here. Samir, please take the stage and take as long as you want. You're only keeping people from the bar.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gould. I think I've made this comment before, but it's very dangerous to ask a diplomat to take as long as he wants to say what should be a few words. But I'm going to say three things. First of all, I'm just simply honored to be here before you and this audience for a third time in my 2-year posting so far here in Chicago. It's a third time for me, and there were 7
occasions before where my predecessors appeared before you at this kind of an event. And I think these 10 years are just a mere testimony to something wonderful that we have built here together with Matter and PointB. It's rare to have something like this last for 10 years, and particularly through the pandemic. And so congratulations is the first thing I'd like to say to Matter, to PointB, to the people who made this happen. Chantal, I see you back in the room there, but also Molly Banuelos, who managed this for one iteration, and now Julian Rosen, my colleague at the Consulate, who handles our life sciences sector. So congratulations. I want to say thank you because last fall, we at the Consulate won an award at the Chicago Innovation Awards. And Chicago Innovation is this wonderful organization that brings together the Chicago innovation ecosystem. And they recognized us in the collaboration category for all the things that we do with Chicago's innovation system, ecosystem. And that all started here. It started here with Matter, with C2MP as the first program. And then we went on and did similar things with MHub, with 1871, with the quantum ecosystem, in the food sector, and in many, many other sectors, verticals, and industries. But thank you for that. We are proud that we together have built something that has contributed to that success. And finally, I want to say welcome to the Canadian companies from Newfoundland all the way to Alberta. We didn't make it quite all the way across to the other coast. We need to get more companies from British Columbia next time. But welcome. I think you're in wonderful hands here, and I wish you all the very best in the weeks and months to come, and best of luck in the US market to all of you. So thank you, congratulations, and welcome. Thanks.